Check the spelling. Prologue, 1966, by Randy Fuller. The blacktop stretched in a straight line through the New Mexico desert into a hazy oblivion. I had been elected to drive Mom's Oldsmobile home to Texas after the funeral. She and Dad had flown home, and later Dad said Mom had to be restrained because she was out of her mind with grief and trying to jump off the plane. I haven't seen this before. And, it's striking a weird chord in here. The 88 was towing an overloaded trailer packed with all of Bobby's stuff. Instruments, amps, records, clothes, everything. Mom wanted to take it all back home. I don't know what for. This older couple, friends of my parents, the Pierces, were along for the ride back to El Paso. They didn't want me driving all the way back alone. They were just laying in pools of sweat in the back seat pretty much. I looked in the rearview mirror and Mrs. Pierce had her head back, mouth open, catching flies. A hot wind was blowing the car and trailer around real bad, even with the 394 cubic inch rocket V8 engine, that's so Randy, going full tilt. We nearly turned over a couple of times with that trailer pulling in all directions. There was nothing but sand in all directions outside and inside the car. It was like a pressure cooker waiting to blow. The AC wasn't doing a damn thing, and the car was starting to smell of gasoline coming up off the seats and the floor. I had the radio going, and when the news came on, they said the temperature was 111 degrees. Like that was nothing special. Normally, without a load, you could drive the 800-mile distance between LA and El Paso in 12 hours. At the rate we were going, it was going to be tomorrow before we got into Texas. The car stank of gas, something terrible now. I kept going over things in my head, blood all over the seat, the gas can, the worn slippers, his face all covered with oozing red blisters. I had put papers down over the bloody bench seat so the Pierces didn't have to look at it. Bobby's head and face had been way down in the crack of the seat, and he bled from the face there. They had pulled him right out, backwards, the cops that is. They just pulled him right out of the car, head first. You could see it on TV. It was on the news, showing them pulling his body out of the car and sticking it into the coroner's vehicle. I think they just thought he committed suicide, and that was it, and they didn't do anything else about it. A lot of musicians committed suicide back then. I guess because of drugs, or a few anyway. The gas stink was getting unbearable, and now there was something worse going on that no amount of air conditioning was going to be able to help. I opened my window and a huge blast of hot air tore in and whipped up the newspapers I had jammed into the passenger seat to cover the blood. The stained papers fluttered around the car in a whirlwind and slapped into Mrs. Pierce's face. She let out a scream like some kind of wild animal. It scared the hell out of me, and suddenly I see some drunk coming down the wrong side of the highway, and I swerved to the other side, holding that wheel with everything I could muster. The car and trailer came to a stop on the dirt shoulder, setting off a giant cloud of dust. The car radio was blaring. Mrs. Pierce was still screaming, and the car seemed to fill with the smell of death. I got the door open and made it out a few steps into the desert before I fell on my knees, retching. Now both of the Pierces were crying, and I heard Mr. Pierce say, "Oh Lord," a few times, so I knew he was praying. Or maybe he was cursing. The sun was burning a hole into my head as I turned to find my way back into the car. I fell into the seat and went to pull the door shut. Typo. Pull the door shut, immediately feeling my flesh fry and the touch of the metal handle. I pulled away howling, and I knew I was about to cry like a baby. As though on cue, the radio started blasting, "I Fought the Law."